we teach things differently. And so, I thought we could take a few minutes to maybe look at and see. I know we did a little bit of it yesterday, but, if there was a certain SE that maybe somebody taught or scored higher in, that you could share out. What is something that you do for a particular SE? And we could maybe just hear, maybe we could talk for maybe 10 minutes, about that specific SE. I know figure 19, D and E are, that's overarching. We know that is multiple pieces across genre, but if we look more specifically at, let's say, 5.2b, where we're talking about using the context to determine or clarify the meaning of unfamiliar or multi-meaning words. Ms. Avery, you had 33%, and Ms. Arasuris, you had 34%.
What are you looking at? I'm sorry.
5.2b.
Oh, we're back. Okay.
Because you had a good person.
So it was, for everybody that was low, except you two seem to have a higher. Ms. Starnes, you were at 31%. So, what
Which
types of things are you guys doing in terms of using,
Which teak though? Which teak is
She's looking at 5.2b on the first page.
because as a whole, we only scored 25% on that. So, maybe you guys could share some of the things that you're doing.
We never did get a key for that test, right?
No, I emailed twice about
To
it.
see which, teats were which on
I
there.
have a girl get a 96. I told you could use her test, but I never
I was trying to not make it
I never
loud.
did,
I never did remember to send that to you. Girl missed one. She got 100 numbers.
So how are you using the context to determine meaning? Is there anything specific you can think about that you feel like is a,
I know those. I'm sorry.
no, is there something
Those-
that pops out?
The stories that we do, the first story that gives the word in the story, those are so good for teaching vocabulary.
Yeah. That's
And
what I was
then,
thinking.
yeah.
Just like we use that a lot with like even like like our those little warm ups those that we do, like just like figuring out the meanings of words and clues, and when it says or but or when there's a difficult word and the words like following it, like we always look at the sentence after or the sentence before.
Well,
but-
that's what they use.
It
Yeah.
sounds vocabulary.
I guess like the context clues here. What does the word serenaded mean?
but look at
That's
the
probably-
answer, look at the answer choices for that question. There were 2 answer choices that I thought I could choose.
Well, croaked without stopping, entertained with songs, interrupted with noise, attacked without mercy. But
Because serenading is singing, and I know that, but in the story, they're talking about frogs that are croaking. So which one is supposed to be the right answer? The kids are gonna go with the literal thing, they're talking about frogs croaking. I know what the definition of serenaded is, cause my vocabulary, but
Right.
how are they
So
gonna
how
make
can
that
we,
distinction?
when we're looking at passages, so it kind of goes back to yesterday when we were talking about, because we're moving into the, informational text. And that's where many of our students, when we're talking about that academic language or that informational text, we see a lot of those types of vocabulary words. This is where we're talking about decoding or
Right.
syllabication, prefixes, suffixes, we're talking about the base word, the root word, breaking that word down for the student. That's really important because many of our kids, they'll read the word and they know the word great. But when they have too many errors in a passage or whatever they're reading, it violates their comprehension. So then, instead of going back and rereading the story, a lot of our kids will just answer the question. So a lot of times, instead of rereading, because if you read at a 3rd or 4th grade level, they'll read it, they'll answer the questions, but they don't necessarily want to go back and reread it. Whether, even though we're telling them to do that, they know they have more to go and they don't really feel like keep struggling through it. So our best bet is to hopefully, teach them how do we break that word down? And so a lot of times, you know, even when and you may do this too, but I mean, I'm just, when I get up to the board and I'm teaching, and I have a word, okay? Obviously, they're probably gonna know awake, but you know, the AKE, you know, vowel, consonant, vowel, but they don't hear the E, okay? So it's a two syllables. So I'll go ahead and do my, you know, I'll show them some of that coding, you know, even when we're talking about having the document camera and you have the story up here. When you guys come across your vocabulary words, I would even write the word on the board, and I would even go ahead and, you know, break the word apart for them, do the syllabication, and then show them, you know, when you have two syllables, all of our vowels are open and voiced. So our vowels are open, A, E, I, O, U, and they're voiced. So if you have them touch their throat, ah, I, O, vowels are voiced, consonants are unvoiced or blocked. And some of these things don't make sense to kids, but for some kids, that's what they need to hear. So we know that it's vowel, A, you know, our E is silent. So it's w, A, k. And K, also, what other letter makes the K sound? C. Or sometimes C, K. Okay, which is a digraph. So, you know, sometimes if we take, I mean, we don't do it all the time, but if as many of these pieces that, you know, sometimes if we take a second to do some of that, it's going to help some of those kids who maybe need to hear that again, or maybe they've learned this, but they didn't remember it, or they need to hear it a second time. So now I can sound this word out. And so if we're talking about that multi-meaning word, they may know how to say awake, but I know awake doesn't have a multi-meaning, but when we're talking about weight or whole, H-O-L-E, W-H-O-L-E, you know, they write the other meaning out so they can see it. Take the time to do that. Those are the little things that I think we skip over because we assume they have it or know it. But if we take the time to do it, it takes 1 or 2 seconds or maybe a minute, and you have no idea how many kids that helps.
I think that's the same thing as like piggybacking on what she said yesterday with the whole metacognition. Like we kind of take that for granted and we don't break it down quite like we know we
Guilty.
mean. I was kind of like, okay.
Yeah. That was a big one for me.
Well, and this one, and the other word is grudgingly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had to see what that word meant.
Can
And that has a suffix, ly. So when you go back through there, you'd want to put that on the board, and then you could, you know, suffix ly, and you could even talk about what does that mean when I add it to begrudged or grudge. What does that mean? And when I add the ly, how does that change the derivative?
And hope they know what because the answer choice is reluctantly, sincerely, willingly, and desperately.
That's why they're missing them.
It's the answer choices are confusing.
Not just
if
that,
they
but that
know- if they know what a
vocabulary.
grudge
They don't
is
know
as a
what
noun.
confusing. Well, not maybe confusing, but
They're not
begrudging.
necessarily gonna get to grudgingly being reluctantly, which is what I'm assuming the correct answer is.
Because reluctantly
But
means
holding a
hesitation.
grudge, if they know that word at all, they know that holding a grudge is not forgiving somebody.
Right.
So you can't get to reluctantly from there, really.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Retail in logical order. It was
Okay, anything else? So anybody else have something they want to share about how they, you know, work on multi-meaning?
Well, when we're going over the spelling list, we talk about if there's a multi-meaning word on the spelling list, we say, well, this word sometimes means this, and it sometimes means
Yeah.
this, and the kids will volunteer that, cause they, well, I think it means this, and see, so we bring up that sometimes words have more than one meaning. And that's not seeing it in a context, but it is a word that they're gonna be practicing and be familiar with. And then they have to figure out a way to use it in a sentence when they're doing their spelling assignments.
I think that's what's what's missing for me is that, like you were just saying, when I did a mini lesson a couple of times on multiple meaning words with our spelling list, like she was saying, but that was teaching it in isolation when I should have been, I guess, what I have to focus on now is everything I teach needs to be within a paragraph or within a sentence or within a passage. It can't just be, because they knew, because when I did it, they were like, oh yeah. I said, name some homophones. They had it. Name some homonyms. Got it. That was third grade. We got it. So they were okay with it in isolation, but where my kids are struggling is when they see it in a story. But it took yesterday, even though I had a headache, it took yesterday for me to figure out what, like you were saying, the aha thing, that everything needs to be presented in a paragraph or a passage at this point. And then teach the skills from that rather than trying to teach it in isolation. Because my kids don't need the isolation; they need to learn how to read it in a passage.
So does that mean we're abandoning doing the spelling?
Oh no,
No.
We still need to do the.
I'm still gonna teach it. The spelling. Go over it. But I'm just saying I need to do more of this. And the short passages were my savior, because that was the problem, is trying to find time for me to read a whole 5-page text and come out with stuff.
Right.
But this I can read in a few minutes and mark it up, annotate it. So
Okay, any other, teak you wanna look at?
Yeah, it's just the vocabulary, and we kind of talked about that, just them knowing what words mean. And like you said, decoding, just going over the vocabulary.
I mean, all these kids, it's 40s, and then Met was 7. It's just like, you guys are, at least 40% should have,
So that's the score they got on the standard.
I
And
see.
your percent score is like your average score.
God.
The raw score is how many questions they got right on average, is that right? On that raw score column?
Mm-hmm.
And then the percent score is their average percent correct of all your students?
I believe so.
It's disheartening at best.
So can this be further evidence that we could all be better teachers if we could only focus on one subject area instead of 2?
I mean, I think that, it's telling them several things. In our leadership meeting on Wednesday, I said, Texas as a whole is going the wrong way. We're teaching to assess. We're not teaching students and then assessing what they've learned. We're assessing constantly. And it's just too bad, because I feel like people just feel so stressed out all the time, because it's just all about, we're hearing about all this data, but we're looking at the data for the wrong reasons. We're looking at data to look at teachers, not to look at students. And I talked about this last Wednesday. So I want to give you guys time to keep planning. If you don't feel like your college hour is being effective, that's not good. I want your time to be effective. This next week for me is going to be crazy, but Bells and I have a time we're going to start looking at the fluency binders. So, my goal is that I start meeting with you to talk about those students and what they need. You guys have to look at what you're doing, and you have to decide what's going to be most effective. If what you're doing is not working, then you have to be able to justify what you're doing. And if you have the proof in the pudding of this is what's working, then I don't know who can argue with you about that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you kind of have to, show that. So, I don't want you to do something because someone said, you know, jump on your right foot and keep doing it because I'm telling you to do that. You know what I mean? Like, don't stop and you're like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, don't just do it because someone's telling you to do it. I mean, I want you to be effective. I mean, it needs to be effective for your kids. And I guess, you know your students at this point. You know what they need. You know where they're at. I mean, you're looking at the data because you're their teacher. I mean, we know at this point they need to be reading, they need to be writing. Many of them need other pieces. So how are we giving them those things most effectively?
At some point though, it can't just be, I mean, because the kids are, some of my kids, and I get it, you know, all we do is take tests all the time, all we do is take tests all the time. I get it.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to come up with some things in college hour that are more fun. And, you know, provide them.
And learning should be fun, and
To-
they're taking all the fun out of it.
You go take some time and cause those kids are on fire to take these little AR tests, and yeah, they're taking tests on little half-point books, and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna let that go. 'Cause eventually they're gonna
I mean,
run
they
out of
want it,
half-point
But they
books.
want to do it,
They're
right?
really so
do it.
successful, and
Yeah,
they're so excited
and
to
we
show
should-
me
and
their
there should be
scores.
some successes.
And I love that, and so I'm trying to put something in like, okay, write a script for a puppet show. And I have
Well,
this script,
yeah.
and you can do this fun stuff over here. I don't
Yeah.
want it to just be drudgery and going over a test all the time, because they already don't like to read,
That's true too.
and that's just killing them.
Well, that should be, I mean, that's college hours.
I like
mean,
that.
it should be AR tests and practicing and writing a script, and that's what that's what I hope, those are some of the things you're doing. I mean, those are some of the independent practices that I hope you're able to do as you're pulling up your pieces. You know what I mean? I'm hoping that you're able to get some kids doing some of those other things so that you can work with some of those other students and kind of rotating them through your center.
My kids are just loving any opportunity I give them, like I had them write a spooky story,
Yeah.
and then they got to share them out. They're so excited.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're gonna write a Thanksgiving story.
Yeah.
They love to get to do fun stuff like that, and it seems like so much of our time is,
Well, and that's why I do like the
Just
model
it's
rebellion.
it's
because-
not any fun,
yeah.
so I'm trying to use
Yeah, that
college
one
hours,
was good.
especially.
Yeah. Oh, I've been using that site with the books and.
Oh, I had to.
Oh, there's so many. There's a Tia and Tamara,
Story online,
Yes.
yeah.
and it has a
And
song.
they wanna listen to that.
Yeah,
They really want
yeah.
that.
I've been doing that's sort of a whole group thing though, and I was concerned when they come in and my kids, because like you said, I'm trying to give them a chance to. Okay, we have a little bingo that has root words. Well, it has words, and the little cards have dict and they love. I only know that one by heart because that's the one they love the most. It has that. It has all those pre, post, all that kind of stuff. And so you're looking for the word that has it in there, and they play bingo with that. So every group is ready for that game. That's like the best actual skill thing. That's a game that I could find.
Can you share that game?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
But in order to do that as a center, you have to first do that as a group.
Right.
That's just how it has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So you see how, I mean,
Okay.
if you're gonna teach it a center, you have to first do it as a group. So then it happens here, then I do the next one, then it happens here. So,
Yeah.
again, as long as you're able to clarify that with them, it's fine. I don't think, it never happens, just everybody's doing a center and it looks great every time. Quickly, before we keep planning, Scholastic Book Fair will be next week. Patterson's gonna be working it mostly. I'll be in there a lot, but I've worked everybody in the schedule, even though 5th grade isn't next week. Everybody goes through the book fair. Now, I know a couple of you didn't get into the library. I know Branch didn't get in last week, nor did,
They all have these books I've been reading forever.
let's see, Era Series, you were able to get in. Miss Martin.
Oh,
We didn't go yet.
Okay, so, what, for you two, I do have you in a 30-minute block. Now, they're not gonna be able to, like, be in there checking out for 30 minutes, but they'll be able to check in, check out. I'll make sure I'm in there to do that with you or somebody. And then, so they'll have to check in, check out for like 15, and then we'll let them go through the book fair for like 15. So that we'll need to accomplish both. And then, for the other 5th grade groups, if they can just do the book fair. Now, if you have a kid who is done with their AR book and they really, I really need this book. I mean, we won't tell them no, but I don't want it to be where everybody's checking in and checking out a book, because I'm not going to have shelvers next week, and you know how quick those books stack up. Yes.
The problem with my kids is they want to spend all of their time on this, and I told them they can't do that. And they started saying, well, when we're leaving the library, hey, I'm just going to grab a book for you. So, I mean, when we get there, can that be reiterated by somebody other than me? Because a lot of them are like, oh, but can I just get this book?
Yeah, I'll tell them, I'll just plan on being in there, and I'll just let them know, hey, you have 15 minutes because of book fair. If you don't get a book, then you're not going to be able to go through book fair.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, hello.
I do have a question about the dressing up.
Yes.
For Friday, is that supposed to be?
Okay, I've given the ELAR teachers an option only, because you're dressing up Thursday night. You know, you're my characters Thursday night.
Okay, yeah.
ELAR teachers, Miss Arasuris, this was her idea.
Yay.
Thank her.
It's gotta be awesome.
Well, Miss Arasuris, she always has really good ideas, and so I went with it.
Woohoo!
And she thought, you guys, most of the other nights, all the other teachers don't necessarily go all out like y'all do. And you have to give a test on Friday. So for your Friday, you have your Unit 2B.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's fine, because really it'll be more of a break for you because you'll be tired. But we have the mystery readers coming in during college hour. But if you guys can dress, instead of being a character the next day, you can dress in like the college you graduated from if you have your college stuff. We still dress professionally.
Oh, so we're not wearing our gear from Thursday night? Okay.
No. I mean, if you want to, you can.
I'll wear my
You're such a copycat.
wear my-
I mean, I've been doing the pajamas for how many years?
I have some books that, I didn't go to A&M, but I have some books that are written about A&M.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I know, I'm sorry, I'm saying this in your room, but there's a lady who wrote several books about A&M traditions,
Yeah.
and I have all of them, so I was thinking I would choose that as a book to read.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you could do that during your social studies time, because you guys have a social studies time, a science time. Well, I mean, I don't
you
know
can't
how
do
long
it
your
during-
I
test
have
is
to
going to
read my
take.
Mrs. Frizzle book on
Well, I mean, and your mystery reader may not take the whole hour, because some of the mystery readers are concerned that they have to read the whole time, and I said,